Welcome to the Doctor Connect, where we are connecting through inspiring stories and providing education and information around wellness, health, cancer, and medical technology. I'm your host, Dr. Ludmila Schaefer, medical oncologist broadcasting from Kansas City in the United States. All information discussed on this platform does not substitute your medical care. Guests on this platform discuss their own stories, experiences, and conclusions. And with that, today we will have a very, very valuable conversation. We all know that the health has not been health touch every single person every single day. There has not been one single person that would not discuss health issues or know someone that has a health issues. And today, what we will cover conversation with two experts, and we'll discuss health issues among all ages. And with that, we will be right back. I'm Dr. Ludmila Schaefer, and I level the playing field of knowledge around wellness, medicine, and research to help you to make informed decisions. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. It's such pleasure having you today. And today we have our two very, very special guests. We have Brandy Meilenberg. Hi, Brandy.
Hi, Ludmila. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for joining. And we have Dr. Courtney Conley. Welcome, Courtney.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It is so amazing. And today, for a very special reason why we are connecting together, because we really would like to cover and discuss issues among many generations. And I would like to start from both of you. Tell us full name, where are you located, and a little bit what do you do? How are we going to uncover and unfold our conversation for the next hour? And we're going to start with Brandy. Brandy, please.
Hi, thank you so much, Ludmila, for having me here. I'm so honored. So my name is Brandy Meilenberg. I am located in Boise, Idaho, here in the United States. And I am a certified integrative nutritional health coach. And so I work with clients around the world who are suffering from autoimmune conditions, gut health issues, and I'm also a body image expert. So I help people with a bunch of different things, depending on kind of what's going on with them, to help them heal and feel better.
So what ages do you cover? Do you see patients, or do you work with everyone or certain population?
You know, the majority of my patients are adults. I think it's just because most of the time we're in adulthood when we actually get diagnosed with autoimmune conditions. I do work with some teenagers, not very many children, although I see that rising because a lot of times we're having kids that are now being diagnosed with different autoimmune conditions as well. So currently it's mostly adults, but I see that shifting over the next few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And thank you so much, Brandy. It's such a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you.
Courtney, please tell us about you, your full name, where you located, and a little bit of a backstory.
Awesome. So my name's Dr. Courtney Conley, and I'm in Maryland. I'm actually a little bit outside of Washington, D.C., so about 40 minutes south of Washington, D.C., and I am an adolescent therapist. So I've been working with adolescents over the past 13 years. I have been in the world of school counseling. I have my own private practice right now, and I focus a lot on spiritual health and wellness and just helping teenagers embrace who they are and be comfortable with that and authentically navigate high school.
Yeah, it's so much foundation starts early on, and how we pay attention and how we manage and all not only health issues, but behavior and so much. It starts early on. And also there's some foundation, I believe, we and, some of us, I'm probably as guilty. We think when we're young, everything is okay and there is no issues. And that also, as we're growing up, we have to remember, to do regular checkups, to see healthcare providers, do all kind of things. So that foundation is very, very important. And that's why you and Brandy today, we kind of unfold and uncover, and we see, how do we transit and how the health actually touch every single person from early on. Later, it's either in the form of health, wellness, or other issues. With that, I would like to start our conversation with Brandy. And thank you, audience, for joining us. This is the Dr. Connect show, and we will be right back. Well, again, welcome, Brandy. It's been a long time since we've seen each other. And thank you for joining. So, yeah, so we would like to know a little bit, for all expertise that you've been doing, do you have any story or where everything began? Is it something personal experience? Is it other person in your life? Is it someone you saw? Or where is the roots for that?
Yeah. Actually, it's very personal experience is how I got to where I am today. I actually am a registered respiratory therapist as well, and I had spent over 10 years working in the critical care realm. And I thought I knew all there was to know about human bodies and health and wellness and kind of how everything worked. And it wasn't until I had my own health scare where I had unexplained weight gain and all of these symptoms and all of these things happening to me, and I couldn't explain any of them, and nobody could explain them either. It was just, all of my lab work, everything was coming back normal. And I was constantly being told, everything's fine. It's, it's just part of getting older, growing up, or, whatever. And it just became debilitating. And it wasn't until I lost my gallbladder and then 2 years later had a full hysterectomy that I realized, okay, I'm losing body parts here. Something is really not right. And that's when I really decided to dig in and study health and wellness and find out for myself what was out there and what I could do and what I didn't know. And so really that process led me to where I am today. And it ended up being kind of a 10-year journey from the time that I started really digging in and trying to find answers to the point that I got my actual diagnosis of Hashimoto's and celiac disease. And so that whole journey kind of propelled me into this world of health and wellness.
Well, my sincere sympathy, and I hope, things will be doing well. And also, I would like to add that, 10 years ago in medicine, were not also as many resources, and it was completely different what we see today with all digital technology and new tests, and also access, and especially during pandemic, the world became flat. So we see, more and more sort of ask, and we can probably easier to reach out digital world. And how have been your journey, over 10 years, what you saw back then and now? Let's say if someone, would like to get more information today, I guess they can Google.
Yeah.
How, it's a kind of, right? I'm trying to use my common sense, but if it is. But how did you start? Back in the days, 26 years ago, I basically were no computers when I studied medicine, and we did everything through the book. Can you tell us this journey, that 10 years, what you saw back then and now?
Yeah, so I did find myself down the Google rabbit hole at one point, which can be quite the trap. But what kind of was lucky for me is that I did work in healthcare, so I was surrounded by so many different professionals and specialists and people that worked in all different areas of healthcare. So for me, it was easy to get access to a lot of information just because I had access to a lot of different people. And so, even if they didn't tell me what I thought I wanted to hear or the answers that I thought I needed, I still went to them and asked questions and, really picked so many people's brains on what they felt my symptoms were and what they could be linked to. And I just kind of gathered all of this information and put it all together into what I thought, made sense for me. And so I really just had this great access. And then, yes, when computers came around and we had access to all of this information on the internet, I did go through Google and I, read every research paper I could find in every journal and everything. Really kind of this rabbit hole of knowledge, I guess. And I really just kind of started building a picture of what it looked like. And honestly, that for me was the first time that I really knew what an autoimmune disease was. I had kind of heard the term in passing and I knew kind of what it was, but I had never really experienced it personally. I didn't know anybody really that was talking about experiencing any type of autoimmune condition. And so for me, that was just kind of this awakening moment of, oh, there's these things out there. And not only is there one autoimmune condition, but there's over 100 and growing autoimmune conditions. And so really it was just such a huge learning experience. And so luckily there's just so much more information out there now than there was then.
And if someone, Brandy, doesn't really know, doesn't has resources or maybe at home, and with the current healthcare system, it's very also difficult to get access, appointments and different access to healthcare, certain information. Everybody's so busy. What would you recommend for our audience? What question they can ask if they don't have access to so many resources? Is it maybe you suggest one specific easy question, to approach healthcare professional or someone that you want? Because a lot of people, they don't feel well, they have symptoms and they think, well, I'm just tired, my children or my family, or I work in the yard, or, I've been working too much. So do you have any specific maybe question that people could ask their healthcare professionals, or tip that they would learn?
Yeah, absolutely. My number one suggestion is, your body more than anyone else does. And so my number one thing is, don't give up on yourself. If you feel like something is off with your body or something is wrong, then you ask all the questions that you absolutely need to get those answers. And honestly, if you have things like chronic fatigue, if you are experiencing joint pain, any of those types of things, autoimmune disease should be kind of in your mind. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you have, but you should kind of be thinking about that. And I think that if you go and see a doctor and you're laying out all of these symptoms, I think that that's something that you should mention. Is it possible that I have something autoimmune going on? And the reason I say that is because, doctors are busy and they're brilliant and they have a bunch of things going on. And so a lot of times that may not be the first thing that they go to when they're listening to your symptoms and trying to put the puzzle together. But if you mention that, it might trigger something for them to say, oh, you know what? You're actually right. I hadn't thought about that. And let me consider that. And let's dig deeper into that. And so I definitely would say, bring that up. Ask the question. Ask if it's a potential for you, if it's something that might be happening. And the biggest thing is, don't give up. I've talked to so many people and worked with so many clients who are just, I've tried and I have all these symptoms and I'm just at my wit's end and I just give up. And that's the worst thing that you can do. Just don't give up, keep trying, and you'll get there. And my other biggest suggestion is, diet and lifestyle are 100% what saved me. Yes, I have a thyroid condition and I have to take medication for that. And that's just the reality. But honestly, like your nutrition, your lifestyle, how you handle your body, what you put into your body is just such a big difference in healing and getting to the right place.
And thank you for those tips. It's so important to pay attention to your body. And also, I would like to step back for a second and explain, because I don't know how many people know autoimmune disease. It happens when your body, the natural defense system, natural cells can tell actually difference between your own cells and the foreign cells. And then the foreign cells kind of attack the body to mistakenly normal cells. So there are actually more than 80 types of autoimmune disease that can affect a wide range organs, different organs. And as by statistics, overall, the autoimmune disease is fairly common. It actually affects in over 23 million Americans. So it is a leading cause of death and disability. So all tips that Brandy just discussed is very, very important. Thank you, Brandy. So can you tell us a little bit for what was the most frustrated or difficult experience in your life or your journey?
I think the most frustrating thing was knowing that something was wrong, something was off with my body, and not having the answers. You really want just an answer, and what is the answer and what can I do? That's really what everyone's looking for. And so for it to take so long for me to get those answers, it was just so frustrating. And at some point you start feeling like maybe nothing is wrong with me. Maybe I'm making this up, or maybe I am just tired because I have kids, or I'm busy, or work is making me stressed. So you kind of start questioning your own symptoms and how you feel. And so that's very frustrating, because it's like that something's off with your body, but everyone's telling you that it's not. And so I think that was probably the most frustrating thing, but that's also what got me to where I am today, because I wasn't willing to let that be the answer. I knew that there was something going on, and I knew that I had to find what it was. And honestly, before I even got my diagnosis, I started changing my own diet. I started looking at what I put into my body. I started looking at different toxins that I could be exposed to, all of these different things. And so by the time I actually got my autoimmune diagnosis, I had already started healing. And so it really is, there's so many things that you can do, even without having an official diagnosis, to kind of start moving in a healthier direction.
Mm-hmm. And Brandy, your company called Functionally Autoimmune, or what is Functionally Autoimmune? Can you tell us where is the name functionally coming from? How did you decide to combine these two words, and autoimmune we understand, and what about functionally?
Yeah, so my business name is Functionally Autoimmune. And, it just came to me one day as I was working with a client and kind of going through some of my own things. And what functionally means to me is that you may have an autoimmune condition, but it doesn't define you. And you can actually function in life normally and in a healthy manner while still having this diagnosis of an autoimmune condition. It doesn't stop you from doing things. It doesn't, it doesn't decide who you are, who you're going to be. And so that is what I wanted people to know, is you can live a healthy, happy life and still have this diagnosis of an autoimmune condition, whatever the diagnosis is. And so functionally for me was, you can function, you can have a happy life, you can reduce your symptoms, you can get rid of all of these things like chronic fatigue or, pain that is keeping you from doing certain things. And so that's where the name came from, is you can still be autoimmune and have just the happiest, healthiest life.
Excellent. And for tips, can you share 3 strategies or 3 tips that if people diagnosed with autoimmune disease or other conditions, what would be 3 coping strategies?
Absolutely. Number 1, I would say build a support system around yourself. So whether that's doctors, health coaches, your family, friends, support groups, whatever that looks like for you, build that support group around you, because there are going to be times when you just need to talk to someone and you really just need to have that support. Number 2 is really take a look at your lifestyle, your diet, what you're putting in your body. If you're someone who's eating a lot of processed foods, that's absolutely going to affect your autoimmune condition. So really take a look at that. And I'm not saying overhaul it overnight, because that can be difficult, but start to make slow changes in eating more whole foods and less processed foods. And as you start to make those changes, you'll start noticing amazing differences in things from your skin to the pain to the fatigue, pretty much everything. And then my third tip would be, again, it goes back to my first thing that I mentioned, is trust your body, listen to your body, and, be your own biggest advocate, because really you only get one body, you only get one chance at, making it operate and work to the best of its ability. And so you're the only advocate your body has. And so be that person, be strong, don't give up on yourself, and get the answers that you deserve.
Yeah, I love it. Don't give up on yourself.
Yeah.
Keep line of communication. Keep lines of communication. Sometimes it can be frustrated because, with the family or, children, we always try to be strong and we move forward. We just do. So we want to tell the audience, it's okay. It's okay to ask a question, to reach out. And if you don't feel comfortable in a circle right now, you can pick up the phone and, you can call Brandy or you can call your healthcare professional, an open line of communication. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you very, very much. And we love having you on our show. And I hope you will come back. And also, if you can please stay for the top of the hour, next 20 minutes, we will have debate. And with that, we love having you. Thank you so much. And it was Brandy Muhlenberg with Functionally Immune. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, hello, Dr. Courtney Conley. Welcome again. It's been a long time since you and I have had conversation. Joining, and you know that we kind of initially decided we're gonna start from young age, from adolescent, and then as I warm up next several minutes, I decided no, we're gonna start from adults. And now we go into the roots. And since you are expert and working with a lot of adolescents, we really would like to hear about that. But let's start from your backstory. And why did you decide to do what you are doing?
Yeah, my decision to work with adolescents definitely came from my own background and not having an easy time as a teenager. I struggled a lot with depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and a lot of that really went unnoticed and unknown because I was really, really great at hiding it and putting on this facade like I was this happy-go-lucky teenager. I was voted class clown my senior year. So that's how well I hid all of these things. It wasn't totally unknown to my immediate family. My mom saw me struggle and I had some weight issues. And so I would constantly try to wear sweatshirts in 80-degree weather just to cover myself up and feel like I could hide, to some extent, not to the full extent, I know that my immediate family knew that I was struggling. So that really, and I've always kind of had a helper's soul. I've always wanted to help folks. So when I went into my grad program, I really had working with adolescents in mind and have done that work ever since 2007. I've been working with adolescents, and then, of course, can't work with adolescents without working with their families and their support systems and things like that. So working with adolescents and families, whether that was as a school counselor or now in my own practice as a therapist, just really trying to serve because I know it doesn't have to be that way. I know, the teenagers don't have to be miserable. And if we can find ways to reach them and help them, hopefully they can not experience what I did or to the extent of, what I experienced and move through high school a little bit happier and healthier so they can turn into, happy, healthy, functioning adults.
And always I sort of think, we kind of think, we say that's adolescent, he'll grow up or she'll grow up. And I kind of believe that for decades, maybe even longer, centuries, we did not really take this, serious. We always kind of say, oh, no, it's okay. We're going to grow up and that's just behavior. It's accepted. So can you tell us a little bit, and for me, for the audience, how to differentiate and what may be signs, how do we look for, when it's, oh, no, it's a teenager, how we used to say.
Mhm.
What are the actual kind of maybe red flags or maybe green flags? Sometimes I don't want to put adolescent in a bad condition. What
Yeah.
are some kind of, things that you might be looking for?
Yeah, I think anytime there are significant shifts or changes, in your child's life, that's one thing to definitely be aware of and explore. If you see a drastic change in friend groups, people they used to hang out with, they no longer hang out with anymore. If they stop doing certain activities that they used to enjoy, whether it's a sport or a hobby or an interest, something like that, looking for those changes as well. A drop in grades can also be, when they're in school, can be an indicator, not always, especially during COVID when people struggled with virtual learning and things like that. But it could definitely be something to watch out for. There are certain things that are typical as a teenager in terms of, withdrawing a little bit, needing that extra privacy and spending more time, in their room or out and about with friends and things like that. So there are certain things that make it really hard, like you said, in terms of, okay, is this just my kid being a teenager or is this becoming a problem? And one of those is, kind of withdrawing and spending what we consider as adults a lot of time alone or in a bedroom or on technology and, that kind of thing. So it is something to watch for, but then to also recognize a certain piece of that, is them fighting for their autonomy and, working their way towards adulthood, and they want that privacy in that space. Another thing would just be mood. We all have bad days, and our teenagers, of course, are going to be that way as well. And with all of the changes going on during their life, during that life phase, to be a little irritable and moody at times, that comes with, the adolescent territory. But if it's consistent and you see it worsening, or you see it like a pendulum quite a bit, swinging back and forth a lot, that's something that I think would be a red flag as well.
And so thank you for this information, Courtney, but I will tell that I grew up without digital device. Did not exist digital device, of course, but we right now see that, a lot of teenagers and even adults, everybody's kind of on the phone and just, sitting and clicking. And I just don't know anymore what's normal and what's not normal, because sometimes, I think, no, I'm just going to check one message. And before I check one friend message, then I already check 5. So how to distinguish, like, is it a pattern what the, let's say, adolescent was doing and now changed? Because there are some people might be right now sitting in the room all the time with their phones. I just don't know anymore.
Yeah. So, I mean, a pattern is really, if you see something that your child typically does and now they're not doing that, that's definitely an indication that something has shifted and changed. It doesn't always necessarily mean in a bad way, but it gives us an opportunity to notice that and maybe explore it with them. But like you said, the technology piece, right? I mean, that's their lifeline. That's how they connect with everyone. That's their preferred way of communicating. And it's not always verbal, how some adults are accustomed to or grew up with, especially if you grew up without technology, you're used to maybe picking up the phone and chatting that way a bit more, or even texting now, is definitely a way that a lot of adults will communicate more so even than phone calls. And for our teenagers, it's important to realize too, that it's not always even, FaceTiming or texting and things like that they use to communicate. But, when we have apps like Snapchat and they're just taking little silly pictures of themselves looking bored or whatever and posting that's also their way of communicating too. So it's a balance for sure between, okay, what's distracting you and keeping you from what you need to get done, and maybe being on the verge of unhealthy, versus, you communicating and having fun with your friends through these various different social media platforms and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for answering this. Also, we know that there are also main issue with health issues. And for example, unintentional injuries are the leading cause of death and disability among adolescents. We do know that it's a traffic accidents, plus there's some interpersonal violence and mental health and alcohol, drug, tobacco, we name it, and it's not even counting that we have some nutrition deficiency, and it list goes just on and on and on. And we try to see if we can bring our children, let's say with adolescent, to see the doctor, but it would be difficult to convince. It would be very, very difficult to convince. I don't know, have you seen in your practice that it's kind of issue where the parents wants, but adolescents do not want to see healthcare professional, or vice versa, and how to close this gap, how to close the breach, and find the solution?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've seen quite frequently where an adult, in their life, or a parent will identify what they think is a concern, and then, the adolescent just doesn't see it that way. And so part of, I think, negotiating that, because we can take them there, right? But to have them engage in something like counseling or therapy, or even just to be open and honest, with their health practitioner, if we're just forcing them to go, or you're not really going to get that. So I always try to remind teenagers and adolescents that, when you actually go and seek help, that's not a weakness, that's a strength, right? That's very courageous.
That's right.
Especially, well, in my line of work with doing therapy with adolescents, I remind them of how courageous that is to come in and say to somebody who's at first a stranger, I'm not feeling great and I need some help. And, to be willing to be vulnerable and put yourself in that position, it's quite courageous. And that sort of flipping the script for them helps reframe it for them to where it lessens the stigma and becomes something that they're can be more proud of and empowered by. And I think you could do the same thing again with, seeking out help from a healthcare practitioner. Okay, well, even if nothing is wrong, or you feel like nothing's wrong, what's the harm in being proactive? Let's go and get these things checked out and tend to our wellness, because I think that's really important to instill in our adolescents. We live in this kind of crazy society where we work ourselves to exhaustion, and that's kind of considered something to be, I don't know, proud of, I guess I want to say. Like, oh, I just worked like 20 hours and, so we work ourselves to exhaustion. And I think this is a really important thing to instill in our adolescents, is the need to slow down, to rest, relax, to tend to our own wellness, because, I think Brandy said something along the lines of, this is your, you get this one body and here you go, So instilling that in them from a young age, so that they're taking care of themselves into adulthood, is really what it's about. Because we know that those mental health concerns, if they're not addressed, when they're adolescents, it's going to carry over into adulthood and most likely worsen.
Yeah, could be more significant form. And what I hear from you, kind of be creative rather than forceful. And I really like that option that you brought up, that you try to be creative, and maybe even sometimes talk to the stranger. It may be even easier than to your family member, because we know a lot of times we say, no, it's easier to speak with the family, but sometimes it might be even barrier, because we are so close. And be creative. So I really like that, and sort of personalized approach. And just for other, my curiosity, when you speak with adolescents, do you tell them about like your experience? Do you tell them that, oh, what I, went through, or you kind of try not to bring more information? How do you approach in this situation? I guess what I'm trying to come out is if we can give some tools to, parents and adolescents there. So we'll break into two categories. But right now, can you answer if actually you tell them about your experience?
Mhm. I would have to say it depends on whether or not I feel like it's going to help serve the teenager or the adolescent. If
Individualized. Uh-huh.
yeah, if I talk about like I can empathize with what you're going through because I certainly did not have an easy time in high school. So something like that might be an example of how I would share a little bit about my background, but I don't always go into complete detail because I feel like it takes away from their story a little bit. And when we empathize with folks, it's tough because sometimes we forget that even though I might have went through a similar experience, it's still different from how someone else is experiencing that same situation. So I don't ever want to overshadow, what they're going through by assuming that our experiences are that much similar. But sometimes it does make them feel a little bit more at ease because they see me as an adult that has it all together. So sometimes it does make them a little bit more at ease to know, hey, look, it took a while for me to get here, and it wasn't without struggle that it happened. And that also sometimes instills a little bit of hope for them. Like, okay, so this feels awful right now, but I can move past it.
And Courtney, you really brought up a very, very important point, because when young people or adolescents, they communicate, and then next generation, let me put just Generation X or traditionals, and we tell, well, but what we did and what and it's not always, like you said, it's not always like that. We probably should not be bringing necessary, on us that, but I went through, and in my years, we would never. So this is very, very crucial what you just said, and it's a very important learning point. Have individualized approach, get feel, for the person before you say I, or maybe like you said, oh, that would be the right, let me see if I can just, join, and we just solve it together because I went through. So really appreciate what you just said. Now, regarding some tips and points, can you please share, because one, I was just thinking about taking a board exam, over a decade ago. I remember had a question, and I don't know why I remember this question on my board exam, internal medicine. It said, if you want for teenager to stop smoking, do not tell teenager stop smoking. You're supposed to say your teeth will be yellow, and the girls or boys won't love you, so you just won't look as cute. So that was actually one of the this question is just stuck to me for a decade, about this yellow teeth versus stop smoking. And now I just was thinking about it, and of course, it might be different. Can you share some tips separately for maybe parents or adults from your perspective? And of course, we just share, experiences and conclusions. We want to make sure that audience understand that this is not a law. We are just connecting through the heart, mind, body, soul experiences. So can you share your experience?
Yes, my advice that I always give to anybody working with adolescents, parents, whomever, is to truly just sit back and listen, because a lot of times in our society, we listen to respond and to add to the conversation and not to truly understand. And the biggest thing I hear from adolescents as I'm working with adolescents is they feel like adults don't care or they don't understand. And I know that's not true. I just know we're not making our adolescents feel heard. So one of the best ways to do that is literally just try to sit back and listen to understand before you jump in there with any kind of advice or explanation or whatever else it might be. Try to validate their feelings. If you validate somebody's feelings, it doesn't reinforce the behavior, and it doesn't mean that you necessarily agree with what they're saying, but you're willing to hear them out and you're willing to listen to understand. And that's important in making somebody feel heard and understood. And that's going to build that trust so that they're going to want to come to you if they're having challenges and struggles, and, maybe not hiding it to the extent that I did. Maybe they'll come out and say, you know what, I'm not feeling great and I think I need to talk to somebody. So I always start with that first, is really truly making them feel heard and understanding what it is they're saying. And then we talked a little bit about the empathy, and one of the things that I included in my book is this perception glossary, because as adults, we are very well intended, but we sometimes minimize the problems of our teenagers because we compare them to the problems we experience as adults, and then we decide they're not that important. Mm-hmm. But it's really critical to keep in mind that they're in their own life phase, and what they're going through is just as critical to the issues that we are encountering in our life phase. They're where they should be. We are where we should be. So it's not really fair to them to decide that, their issues with a particular teacher aren't as important as our issues with a boss or an employer. So keeping that in mind too, and not minimizing what they're going through, is really helpful. And it's just going to help open up those lines of communication that are going to help result in them coming to you when they are experiencing these challenges and issues.
Yeah, I guess, we're not only dealing with development changes, also with physical changes, with mental health. I mean, it's a whole spectrum of things that I feel, when I was growing up, and of course, we did not have that much digital technology and so on. It was different time back then. But, there is a whole spectrum, and I feel like the spectrum unspoken. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you feel the same. I guess we just need to raise a certain awareness.
Yeah.
And also, you mentioned about the book. Can you tell me what's the name of your book?
Yeah, so I felt called to serve, a larger audience, because I can only work with so many teenagers one-on-one in my individual practice. So my book's called Your Daughter Doesn't Have to Be Miserable: An Approach to Supporting Your Teenage Daughter Through Depression. And at the time, I was seeing a lot of adolescent females that were struggling with depression, anxiety, low self-worth, negative self-talk, all of that. And so I wrote my book to reach mothers, because I was doing a lot of work with mothers and teenage daughters. There sometimes tends to be a lot of friction there. So I wrote the book, to reach mothers of teenage daughters who might be struggling. So
yeah, thank you.
Give them some tools and tips.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that audience knows how to reach out to you and to Brandy. And with that, thank you so much, Courtney, for joining. And also, we love having you on the show, and I hope you'll come back in the future and with Brandy, and we continue conversation. But with that, we have to bring a panel. And I'm going to bring Brandy back, and we just sort of rediscuss around health among all ages. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it was Courtney Conley, and we will be right back with you.
I'm Dr. Ludmila Schaefer, and I level the playing field of knowledge around wellness, medicine, and research to help you to make informed decisions.
Well, thank you so much for staying at the top of the hour. And for everyone, this is the Dr. Connect show. And we are connecting through experiences, stories, heart, mind, body, soul, health, multiple. Sometimes people see that it's a doctor and they think, no, I don't have anything medical here. But we are actually connecting through wellness. Wellness is also very, very important part. And if we start from how well we live, then we also lead into health and find out, like Brandy said, we have to sort of ask the right questions. And like Courtney said, we should not be sort of forceful and make sure we have personalized approach. And thank you so much for staying with me. Now, I would like to open a little discussion conversation. Maybe both of you have some question for each other, just sort of freelance and brainstorm.
Yeah, I would like to just say I really enjoyed listening to Courtney. As the parent of my second teenager, I definitely understand everything that you're saying. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that and being that voice for adolescents and for their parents. And there's so many difficult things that kids can run into today, especially with social media and all the technology. I mean, there's just so many things that we didn't have as kids that they now have access to. And so, yeah, I appreciate everything that you're doing for them.
Brandy, do you find, you said 2 teenagers, right? Do you find okay. Do you find a lot of differences in each kid?
I do, yeah. Well, they're different genders. So my daughter, who's now 22, she was a very different teenager than my son, who is now 14, is. And I tend to wonder if it's a gender thing, if they're very different because they're different genders, or if, it's just that their personalities are so different. But absolutely, it's a completely different all-around experience.
Yeah, and we do not cover. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think what Brandy was saying is important too, because I think there's different social pressures and things like that teenagers experience a little bit differently based on gender as well. Some of them, like messages that they receive and some of the things that they're trying to embody, and especially even with social media and how that can impact our self-worth and whatnot. I really think adolescent males and females embody that differently.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And, I do a lot of body image work with all ages. And I do find that social media and our technology plays such a huge role in just how, especially teenage girls, but boys as well, just how they feel about themselves and what they're supposed to look like and how they're supposed to fit in. And I think that that's something that we didn't have to deal with as kids. And I know that that's really hard for them. We had TV and we had magazines and things like that. So we kind of had the same pressures, but it's everywhere now. And so, they're seeing all of these things and it can be really hard for them to determine what's real and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand right now pressure, like you said, we did not have that much pressure right now, pressure of looking perfect, but also when we see that, like you, Brandy, mentioned about body image, and let's say some of the girls or boys, and they get to, healthcare facilities. They get to healthcare facilities and, who takes care of them? It's a different generation, right? It's experience, it's experts, but also those experts were growing up in a different condition. So we really need to study deep and get to the roots of, how do we approach, because those programs are very heavy as far as I learned, before I met with you, I kind of learned a little bit more in depth. Sometimes they end up staying for 4 to 6 weeks in some healthcare facilities, and they don't have access to see parents. It also very different. So have you experienced with something like that, or it's just what I read on Google that in healthcare facilities, there is some barrier how children behave and how they get sort of taken care. I just feel like there is a gap. I just feel that sometimes we just don't represent enough adolescent. We tell that they have issue, we tell that they have digital technology, but like Courtney said, that's the only they know, the way they are. How do you manage this?
Yeah, and I think you really hit an important point, is that the people who are taking care of them are a different generation. And so, we have to try and understand where they're coming from. And I've seen a lot of, in kind of the healthcare setting, a lot of I don't necessarily want to say that they're being put down, but they're really being judged on their amount of time on technology and on social media. And like Courtney said, I mean, that's their communication. That's how they talk to each other. That's what they know as communication. I mean, you know, my kids would rather text me than call me. And, you know, that was foreign to me for the longest time. You know, now I'm used to it, but I was like, what do you mean you don't want to pick up the phone and have a conversation with me? And so it's really just finding that balance of understanding where they're coming from, understanding how they've grown up and what they've learned to communicate with, and trying to be there for them in that and not judge them for it. Because I have seen a lot where there's a lot of judgment out there, like, well, why don't you just turn your phones off or turn this off? And that's cutting off their lifeline, honestly. So
yeah. And they will be saying the same. It's a different time right now.
Yes.
Yes. Courtney, do you have something to add or not?
Yeah, I mean, really, I would echo what Brandy said. I mean, there's so many times when, you know, we assume that the way that they're communicating and the way that they are is wrong, and that, you know, how we were raised and what we're used to is right. You know, and so it's kind of helps create that divide to where they don't feel understood and they don't feel like adults care. Because a lot of it just, again, goes back to us trying to understand what it's like for them, and trying to move away from that judgment. I mean, I think there's a difference between what's healthy and unhealthy. And if your phone's keeping you up all night and you're not getting sleep because you're on your phone and all of that. So there's definitely a place for boundaries around it, for sure. I don't want to, you know, give the impression that there's not. But at the same time, you know, the more that we judge somebody for something, it doesn't make them want to change. You know, if anything, it just pushes them away from us. So there's a lot of ways that we can actually embrace some of what they're doing instead of fighting against it, you know, to have some fun with them around their phone. Ask them for, hey, what are your three favorite, show me 3 funny TikTok videos or something like that. You know, use it to try to connect a little bit and to understand what their world looks like rather than just refusing to accept it.
Yeah, I love it. Show me your 3 TikToks. Yes, thank you. Actually, I'm going to use this tip also like around, and not only for teenagers, probably some adults too. So, well, it's too bad it's already top of the hour. And actually, I would like to ask if each of you, please tell the last tip for our audience, something that one tip, 30 seconds, you can actually tell our audience. And yeah, Brandy, we'll start with you.
Okay, yeah. I think my last tip would be kind of something that I've already said, and that is be your best advocate and stand up for yourself. And that's really the greatest tip that I can give to anyone.
Thank you. And Courtney?
Yeah. So I would have to say, you know, don't be afraid to have conversations with your teenager. They are really good at shutting us out. We know that, you know, but don't be afraid to just go up and say, hey, I don't know, I'm concerned. Something just seems a little bit different. And I just want you to know that I'm here and I'd love to listen. So don't be afraid to approach them and ask them if something seems off or wrong, or you see those changes and patterns we've been talking about.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And I also would like to tell to all audience, I hope you learned some tips today, because we really uncover very important conversation. And everything starts from young age. And like Brandy discussed, you know, we have autoimmune problems, but it starts also early on. And then, you know, we carry. So some of the behavior that we learn early on, we transform later, like, you know, Courtney also mentioned. And it's very, very important. So I love having both of you. I feel like the hour just went so fast. And before we actually finish the show, which it's so lovely to have conversation with you, even if it's such, you know, heavy topic. And especially, I'm sure probably some parents listening and they think, oh, but I was talking about this, or I will take this tip. How the audience can find you, or can you tell the last thing that makes sure that they find you or connect with you? Brandy.
Yeah. So you can find me at www.functionallyautoimmune.com, and you can get access to me there. There's a calendar to schedule an appointment with me, or even just get my body image class. So all of that is right on my website.
Thank you. And Courtney?
Yeah, so that would be the same way, to reach out to me as well. My website is www.courtney-conley.com. And if you are a mother who has a teenage daughter that's struggling, you can also grab my book. That might help you. Your daughter doesn't have to be miserable. All that information is on my website, and you'll see all of that there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, we had very special guest, Brandy Millenberg and Dr. Courtney Conley. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you to everyone for being with us on the Dr. Connect show. Join and subscribe our YouTube channel as well, and comment. And we would love for you to be our guest and share your experience and your story. And we are super excited to have you on our journey with us. And thank you for watching and listening. And we are looking forward to seeing you in the next one. And with that, bye-bye.
I'm Dr. Ludmila Schaefer, and I level the playing field of knowledge around disease prevention, research, and patient care to help you to make informed decisions.